subscribe to my channel.
Alright, hold on. Now let's start. Take these off top.
That's how we rock it at New World, you know what I mean?
We're kicking things off with the delivery. Jermaine and I just pulled up with the Brasilia Hutch in the back of the truck. You'll see us removing the moving blankets here and talking through the safest way to lift this out. When you're working with vintage pieces like this, the first few minutes set the tone. No sudden movements, no stress on the joints or veneer. We take our time easing the cabinet out, bringing it into the garage.
So I'm gonna spin.
Yeah.
So that way, how you gonna grab it? On the bottom, or you gonna grab from the top?
Just like you.
You gonna grab it from the top, bottom?
Yeah.
So you good?
1, 2, go.
This piece has been around for over 50 years. It deserves to be handled with that kind of respect from the start. Now, let's take a closer look at the top of the hutch. You can see how the finish is faded across the horizontal surfaces, especially along this upper panel. UV exposure and wear over time have left the color uneven and the surface dry. That soft sheen you see isn't patina, it's breakdown. And you'll notice some smaller watermarks and finish loss along the front edge. This is the kind of wear we specialize in restoring, bringing back the warmth and richness without overdoing it.
From this side. So that way we can kind of spin it.
And that way y'all can see my haircut again by Boogie the Barber. Yeah.
Boogie the Barber.
Ready?
Yeah. Don't drop it now.
I got you.
All right. Kick that Home Depot bucket out the way. We'll slide this right here and put it on the slider.
Beat it up.
Communication and body control are key when moving something this size, especially when drawer faces and legs are already showing signs of wear. Here's a before shot of the base. You'll see the finish is worn down around the legs, especially on the front corners. That kind of wear usually comes from years of vacuuming or foot traffic. The drawers have some light scratches and fading in the finish. These Brasilia drawer faces are sculptural, which makes them beautiful, but also prone to edge wear and chipping if not handled carefully. We document these areas closely so we know exactly what we're working to correct. This is the canvas, and soon the transformation begins. We're starting the refinish process the same way we start every project in New World, by stripping away the old. This Broyhill Brasilia Hutch came in with its original finish, yellowed and dulled by decades of use and exposure. Jermaine begins at the top of the display cabinet, brushing on a chemical stripper. It takes a few passes to break through the old lacquer and stain, especially in corners where the buildup tends to settle. Once the surface begins to react, he gently scrapes away the softened layers, being careful not to gouge or dig into the veneer. Then we move to one of the doors to repeat the process. This step is all about patience and precision. Our goal here isn't to rush, it's to return the raw wood to a clean, neutral canvas, free from contaminants and ready to accept new life. Every great refinish starts here. Now that the stripping's complete, it's time to prep for spraying. That means taping off any areas we want to protect from overspray, especially the interior glass panels, drawer cavities, and structural supports. We use professional grade painter's tape and a heavy paper to seal off open zones. We're extra careful around the glass. Overspray here can be a nightmare to clean later. Overspray is subtle but dangerous. It leaves behind a cloudy mist of finish that's nearly invisible until it dries. That's why we take our masking seriously. The cleaner your prep, the cleaner your results. Inside the drawers, we discovered some wax residue and what looked like an old furniture polish that had soaked into the wood. You can't refinish over that. It'll reject the stain and finish like oil on water. So I go in with a wax wash. It's a solvent-based cleaner designed to remove oils, silicones, and embedded waxes from antique furniture. A couple wipes and you can feel the surface come back to neutral. That's when you know it's ready. These edges right here, this is where most DIY or budget refinishers fall apart. People forget about them, or they cut corners. But these details matter. When you're opening a door or pulling a drawer, these spots are visible every time. At New World, every edge gets the same care as the front-facing panels. Now we move into sanding, and this is where the work starts to feel more like sculpture than restoration. I used a soft sanding block and 120 grit paper to start. I'm always sanding with the grain here, especially on curved or beveled pieces like this. Power tools can flatten out subtle details, so hand sanding lets me preserve crisp lines while creating a smooth surface. I wipe away dust frequently with clean brush. Dust buildup can scratch the wood or clog your paper, so staying clean is part of staying precise. You can't fake this part. It's about rhythm, control, and feel. Sanding is where you start to see the character of the piece come back to life. With the surface sanded smooth, we're ready to add color. For this piece, I'm using two different wiping stains, Perfect Brown and Medium Brown Walnut. The Perfect Brown is going on interior parts and less visible panels. It's a little softer and blends well with older wood tones. For the prominent areas, I'm using Medium Brown Walnut. It gives a rich, warm tone that enhances the dramatic grain patterns in the walnut veneer. I apply the stain with a clean cloth, working in sections and wiping with the grain. This lets the pigment settle naturally into the pores of the wood. I let it sit just long enough to penetrate, then wipe back any excess. This step is all about balance. Too little and you lose depth. Too much and you mask the grain. Brasilia line is all about contrast and form, so our stain work needs to respect that. After staining the door, I noticed a few scratches that didn't show up until now. This happens sometimes. The stain darkens the surface, and suddenly imperfections that were invisible before start to pop. When this happens, you do not need to panic. Just go back. I resand the section, feather it out, and reapply color. One of the most important lessons in refinishing: don't be afraid to backtrack to get it right. Rushing through mistakes only magnifies them later on in the process. With the staining done, it's time to prepare for grain filling. I cut up strips of burlap, old burlap sack, because it's one of the best tools for pushing filler into open pore woods like walnut and mahogany. The coarse weaves help drive the filler deep into the grain while wiping away excess cleanly. It's not fancy, but it works better than anything you'll find on the shelf. Here we're applying the grain filler to one of the doors. I'm using a medium walnut colored filler. This step is essential if you want smooth as glass, piano-like finish that elevates a piece from nice to premium. I work the filler in with a putty knife, moving against the grain to pack in every open pore. Then I switch to burlap, pulling across the surface and leaving behind only what stays embedded in the grain. After it's dry, we'll let it cure overnight. You can't rush this part, especially not if you want lacquer top coat that reflects like glass. The next morning I come back and sand the cured grain filler with 320 grit sandpaper. The goal here is to remove any film that formed on top while leaving the filler settled deep into the pores. You should still feel the grain under your hand, but it's soft, not rough. That's how you know it's ready for sealer. Now we lock everything in with Mohawk Easy Vinyl Sealer, one of the most dependable sealers out there for lacquer-based finishes. I spray 4 light coats across the entire piece, letting each coat flash before the next. On camera, you'll see me spraying the top of the hutch, one drawer, and a door. Vinyl sealer does more than lock in color. It creates a smooth, sandable surface that builds body and evens out minor grain variations. This step sets the stage for toner and the final finish. Once the sealer is dry, we go back over it with 320 grit sandpaper. This knocks down any dust nibs, raised grain, or minor textures. You want the surface perfectly smooth, no bumps, no drag. This is one of those details that separates a pro finish from a hobby job. Next, we tape off the sections to prepare for the toner coat. This helps prevent overspray on areas where the color is already dialed in. Toner is essentially a tinted lacquer, and it's one of the most powerful tools for creating color uniformity without muddying the grain. Here I'm using a touch-up marker to even out small light spots, especially around the door and drawer edges. These micro adjustments help eliminate visual distractions and give a uniform, polished look. Now I'm mixing up custom toner, just enough warmth to balance out the tones and bring harmony across the whole piece. Lighter areas get a bit more coverage and darker zones just get kissed with a single pass. The key with toner is finesse. You're not painting, you're not tinting. One extra pass in the wrong spot and you can drown the wood's character. It's a delicate art and it's repetition to master. With the color dialed in, we move to the final step, lacquer. I mix my lacquer in small batches using a turkey baster. Yeah, a literal turkey baster. Why, you might ask? Because it gives me consistent measurements every time. Lacquer ratios matter. Too much thinner, it dries cloudy. Too little, can orange peel. You zoom in here to see the measurements. This might look simple, but getting the right mix is what makes the final result look like glass. Now we spray 3 coats of lacquer across the entire piece. On camera, you'll see me working a drawer, a door, and one of the cabinet panels. Light, even passes, controlled distance, no puddling, no missed spots. The lacquer lays down silky as it builds. It starts to reflect light in the way only a properly finished piece can. This is where everything comes together. All the prep, the grain filling, the sanding, it pays off right here. Here's one of the most satisfying parts of the whole process, removing the tape. Watch as the lines break clean across the cabinet top. No fuzz, no bleed, no overspray, just crisp transitions. That's the reward of a proper prep job. And here she is, fully restored and ready for another generation of life. We pan across the cabinet from every angle, highlighting the grain, the tone, the clarity of the finish. The Brasilia line is known for its sculptural quality, and now that the wood is clean and vibrant again, those curves and lines just sing. In the last few seconds, we zoom in tight on the door panel. You can see the depth, the way the lacquer floats above the grain, like glass on water. This is the kind of result we aim for in every piece, not just restoration, transformation. If you found this valuable or just love the art of bringing great design back to life, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. This is New World Furniture and Restoration, refinishing timeless design, one piece at a time.